Hello, my name is Grin, and this is my beard. And today's crumb that's been sticking to my beard that I feel like talking about is growing up kids that are bilingual. So I have two kids. One's a girl, 11, and a boy, 6 years old. And they are bilingual. They speak Japanese and English, and they're fluent in both. My son, a bit younger, he's not as good as my daughter, but he's only 6 years old, so most 6 year olds can't really articulate very well anyways. So how did I get here to this point where I have bilingual kids? And crazy enough, I didn't really have to put in as much effort as you would think because the quantity is just high. Now let me explain what that means. If if you're a parent who wants their kid to learn another language and you're taking them to classes, and they're probably getting maybe 1 hour a week or maybe a couple hours a week of that language. But my kids, when they come home from school, they're with Papa most of the time because I work at home. And that means that when they want to speak, they can speak to me in Japanese, but obviously it's much easier for them to speak to me in English because my English understanding is better. Also, their English understanding is very good too. So it's easier for them. And they like speaking in English to their papa. They like talking to papa. And when they were young, before they even started learning how to talk, I was introducing them to English. Of course, they were also getting Japanese at the same time from my wife. She's Japanese. However, in the house, it's mostly English. Uh, so they have motivation to speak English because they want to speak with Papa a lot. I'm here all the time, and I'm always speaking English to them, and they want to know what I'm saying. But before that, before they even had that desire to speak English, where did the basic ability come from? When when they were growing up, we would teach them words in both English and Japanese. Like mom would teach them the Japanese words, and I would teach them the English words. And so they were getting both at the same time, and it's natural to them. When you learn a language later on, it's not so natural. You're basically thinking in your native language and then translating that back and forth. But these kids, they're bilingual, so they think in English or they think in Japanese, whichever one they're trying to use. That comes with benefits and difficulties. One is if you want to be a translator, you really need to practice at it. If you are somebody who's a translator for a language that wasn't your original language, or it's not your bilingual language but your second language, then it's probably going to be easier for you to translate. The reason why is because you learned that language based on your original language. So when you try to translate, you know what these words mean in your language. But if you have a bilingual situation, you don't have that. You can say what you want to say in English, but then if I ask my kids, what does that mean? How do you say that in Japanese? They'd be like, I don't know. And then vice versa. The opposite is true. If they say something in Japanese and I say, how do you say that in English? They'd be like, I don't know. And it's a skill that you have to kind of learn how to, take that, what you're thinking about in one language and change it over to the other language. If I ask them to explain something in Japanese and I ask them in Japanese, I'll get a Japanese answer. If I ask them to explain something in Japanese, but I ask them in English, they might have a little bit more difficulty doing that. So just right now, I'm kind of teaching them how to do that. I'm asking them questions in one language and expecting an answer in another language, so that they can get some practice at translating the languages. When they were really little, when they were just making babbling sounds and stuff like that, I I gave them what do you want to I have okay, so we have an iPad, and I don't want the kids watching TV so much. You can't control it too very well. I let the kids watch YouTube a lot, but here's the thing. I told them you can watch any YouTube videos you want. I can review them later. As long as it's in English, I don't mind. So basically, they can watch the videos in English, whatever it is. Later on, I can go through the history, and if I find something weird, I can talk to them about it and tell them, don't watch that stuff anymore. And if they do, then they'll get grounded for a day or whatnot. There are consequences for that, but the point is that they were from a young age able to hear and interact in English. And the reason why I did that is because in only English, no Japanese. The reason why I did that is because when they're home, that's when they get English training. But everywhere else they go, it has to be in Japanese. When they go to school, no one there speaks English. When they go to grandma's house, no one there speaks English. When they go to the store, no one there speaks English. So all my effort was getting them to speak and listen to and hear and use English at home. And there's good parts and bad parts to all this. My kids are bilingual. They can read and mostly write in English. Uh, my daughter can read very well in English, but her writing isn't so good. Actually, my son can read in English really well, but he can't write very well at all. They that is great in English, but in Japanese, they're kind of struggling. So my daughter is having a real hard time remembering all the different kanji, and writing it is even worse. We've actually had to send her to a what's called a cram school for kanji, for Japanese kanji. Everything else is great. She really does well in all of her other classes. It's just the kanji in Japanese that she's not doing so well in. And it's difficult because kanji, you've got a special character, which means special things. And in English, if you want to make a special character, you just use the letters that you already know to make that character or that word. So she's having a hard time doing that. And my son is also having some difficulty with kanji now, and I think that might be a thing that happens if you are coming up bilingual. Obviously, writing and reading English is way easier than writing and reading in Japanese because of the kanji, and you can make mistakes on meanings, you can make mistakes on conjugation, you can make mistakes on the strokes of writing it. But in English, it's like you've only got 26 letters, and as long as you can write them, uh, then you can read them basically. But in Japanese, this doesn't work that way. You really need to study each one of the characters, and then you have to know how when characters come together, how it changes. That's the conjugation of the kanji. So how to fix that? There's no good way. I haven't found any good way to help my kids with their Japanese kanji and uh, reading and understanding of Japanese. The only way I could think of was to send my daughter to cram school, which is it's working out for her. She seems to be doing all right now, but it comes at a cost because that's extra time that she can't do doing other things that she used to like and was able to do, like swimming or volleyball or things like that. Although it's hard to find a balance in there anyways, no matter what. But school is number one. She has to be able to speak Japanese. She's going to live in Japan. She's got to speak and read and write Japanese. Her speaking is great. She speaks really well. My son too speaks really well in Japanese and English, and their pronunciation is perfect. I mean, it's kind of strange too, and I don't know what I think I know what it is, but I have a lot of friends who are foreigners married to Japanese women, and their kids don't really speak English. They might be able to understand English, although sometimes I wonder if they're not just faking it, but they don't really speak English so much. And what I found is the big reason for that is because their wives, their Japanese wives don't speak English, which means they don't have an option to speak English unless they're with Papa, and Papa is always working, always out there working for someone else. Most of them are teachers, so they're not at home; they're at school doing their job. They don't get to see their kids as much, and so their kids don't get that opportunity to speak English as much. So they don't. They don't. It's kind of it's what we say mendokusai. It's just a bother to focus on English when the only person you can speak to in English is your father, and you don't get to see him very much. Whereas when I after I got married, I quit my job and started my own business. Um, so I'm always at home. My business is at my house. So I'm always here with my kids and they always want to talk to me. And I think that's really the most important part and the thing that has to be done if you want to uh, have a bilingual child. You've got to give them the opportunity to have both languages and want to speak both languages. My kids want to speak to Papa, so they speak in English. And it's okay. So that's basically the crumb that was in my beard. I think that is the main thing. And the reason why I'm successful at teaching my kids both English and Japanese is because I'm home and I don't really teach them Japanese. In fact, I don't really teach them English either. For my daughter to get her to learn how to read and write English, it was basically I taught her the letters and how to write and how to practice that. But then it was video games. You like video games? I'll buy you video games, but they have to be English. And I don't buy her like beat 'em up smash games that don't have any story. I buy her games that have story where she has to read like Final Fantasy or different RPGs and whatnot. I get her those kinds of games so that she can, focus on the story and read the English, which is great. So she's motivated to practice and to read and that's kind of how she gets her English. So she just both of my kids just took the Aiken test. That's the English equivalency test, and my son took the uh, level 4. So it goes down in levels. So the easiest one is 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. And in between that, like for 2, you've got pre-2, you've got pre-1. And the the first steps from 5 to 4, not so big. 4 to 3, kind of a lot of difference. 3 to 2 is really difficult. That's you have to know quite a bit more. And then from 2 to 1, yeah, it's very very difficult. The difference you can pass the 2 and not be anywhere close to passing the Aiken 1. So my daughter took the Aiken 3, my son took the Aiken 4. They both passed. Uh, so it's like you have to read though. Aiken 4 not so much, but the Aiken 3 it requires a lot of reading and writing, some writing. Um, in fact, the Aiken 3 also has a interview test that you have to do where you have to come into a room, talk to someone in English, read some stuff, talk about the stuff you read and talk about what's on your mind and stuff like that. And then you get a grade for that too. And if you do the test, the written test and the if you pass the written test and you pass the interview test, then you get your certification for Aiken. So I haven't really taught them much. I mean, my daughter and my son have come into my English lessons that I teach sometimes, not, always, just sometimes. And only because they like being in the class with the other kids and they like having that opportunity to learn something from Papa. So they like being with Papa. That's great. I don't really have to, focus on teaching them this stuff. They don't have English homework that they do. They're just picking it up naturally. I think that's yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say. What I wanted to talk about. Wanted to know. Why do my kids speak and read English and Japanese as well as they do, and why can't other people do it as well? And I think I've figured it out, which is just because I'm home taking care of the kids more than other people are able to do. Since I work at home, my business is at home. Whenever something's happening, the kids can come to me, and that's great for the kids. And I think every father should strive to spend more time with their children, just for that. If you want to look for their future, but obviously I like being with my kids. They're fun, and I love them, and so yeah, I kind of feel bad. It's kind of what we call urayamashi. It's a jealous type of thing. I feel bad that my friends can't have as much time with their kids as I do, uh, and I wonder if that's just is it just me, or is it the lifestyle? Is it my choices that allowed me to be in this position where other fathers aren't? I'm not totally sure, but maybe if I talk about it, I thought maybe I could figure out a way to make it better. It's election time, by the way. Yeah, here in Japan, the local elections. So we've got these trucks going by, blasting out their campaign messages and stuff like that. Ugh, I don't know if you could hear that just now. Anyways, that's what was on my that's the crumb that was in my beard today, and I thought I'd talk about it. Sorry for the long-windedness. Thanks. Bye.